Hello and welcome to another episode of Pat Baer's Anime Club. Every other Monday I put a new episode out in this series where I take a look at some of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to anime. Sometimes I'm previewing shows that I'm really interested in. They're happening right now. Sometimes I take a look back at some of my favorite shows and I try to answer some questions that are out there. Sometimes I pose those questions, but this one comes based on an idea that was left in one of my comments. So, if you would like to, in the comments below, you can suggest a topic for a future video. In this case, I was asked to dissect the perfect Isekai. And in that particular person's belief, that is Devil is a Part-Timer, is the perfect Isekai. I wanted to take a look at that. Am I talking about Devil is a Part-Timer in this video? Spoilers, no, I'm not. But it did get me thinking, maybe I could answer the question, at least for myself, what's the best Isekai? Now, in the past, I've talked about Isekai, I've dissected Isekai. I've also, in the past, talked about, what's the best Gundam series to start with? Trying to answer those kind of questions. So I think I'm equipped in this particular subgenre to talk about Isekai. Now, I defined it in a previous video, but I will quickly try to go through that here and give you a sense of what's going on with that. Somewhere you can start with. Let me adjust my mic a little bit, and there we go. Okay, so here are some key terms for you. What's an Isekai? Well, it's an anime where a character travels or is reborn in a different world. It literally just means different world anime, Isekai. And traditionally that was travel to, but it has also taken on the things of being reborn, reincarnated as a theme, particularly in your modern Isekai, which we'll get into in a moment. It can also either be being trapped in an online world or being traveled to an online world that used to be a video game world that is now real. But I didn't want to put all that right there. But I can say it out loud because it's my video. Now, what's a traditional Isekai? This is a term that I'm coining several terms here for different styles of Isekai. And the first one I want to talk about is traditional. This is inspired by ancient Japanese literature like Uramasha Taro, which is the Fisherman's Tale, and Western literature like Alice in Wonderland and other stories of generally young ladies going to a different world or a different time. But also there could be men as well. These shows had female leads with just as much romance as action, and some examples are Fushigi Yugi, Escaflowne. You could look at other series as well. Inuyasha certainly would count, although romance occasionally would take a back seat to the action. But this is your traditional Isekai, the foundation, the first popular Isekai out there. Now, things change because that is a throwback. And right now, we are in the modern style of Isekai, popularized by Sword Art Online and Jobless Reincarnation. The manga of Jobless Reincarnation really set the stage for the tropes that we see in modern Isekai, even if it just finally had an anime adaptation last year. The manga and the light novel, particularly the light novel, really inspired a generation of creators. These generally star overpowered men surrounded by a group of women, heavily inspired by fantasy works and full of RPG mechanics. When you're talking about modern Isekai, you're talking about basically when you think of Isekai, this is what you think of. You think of, a young man or a middle-aged man perhaps who has been reborn or transported into a fantasy world and is overpowered through some sort of happenstance or divine intervention, suddenly has all these powers, meets some ladies along the way who are enamored with him, saves the world, changes things for the better or worse, and doesn't, sometimes runs into some trouble, but not like a lot of trouble. And a postmodern isekai are shows that stray from or parody modernist tropes, everything from having an atypical non-human lead, perhaps, to being a slice of life series or a cooking show. Restaurant to Another World is just like a show about how food is good and people from a different world like food, like Japanese style food. And it's something like By the Grace of the Gods is a recent example. That's just a slice of life about a guy who gets reincarnated as an overpowered character, but he's just a good boy, meeting other people and doing good stuff. Is there some action? There's a little bit. Is it the focus of it? Definitely not. All right, and now let's answer the question, what makes a great isekai? And of course, these are personal thoughts that I have. These might be different from what you're thinking out there, and that's okay. That's totally all right. We can have different opinions on these things, but these are the things I'm looking for in a great isekai. A fleshed out, different world. Not just like your basic RPG with no really thought or attention put into it. I want to see good things in that. A lead character, you either want to succeed or you enjoy seeing fail. There have been plenty of characters out there that are defined just by the tools they have at their disposal in this new world. Not much work is put into figuring out who they were before and versus who they are now, and I'm just not into that. Dynamic supporting cast with their own wants and needs. This is really important to me. Too often you find these characters are just shoved along the way with little rhyme or reason and no real sense of their own. It's only defined by the main character, and they're just window dressing or often put in situations to appeal to a perceived audience. And then contain something that sets it apart. Obviously, that is very subjective. This whole thing is subjective. Everything is subjective, but in this case, it's very subjective looking at. But, the flood of modern and now we're at a point where we're in a flood of postmodern isekai, and things have to set apart. It has to have a twist to it, a take on it, or if it doesn't, just be very, very good, very competent, be an excellent show or manga or light novel. But you have to have something. You can't just be like another show that does this. Now, what makes a bad isekai? Again, these are very subjective. These are just thoughts that I have. You may not agree with it. You may totally agree with it. But this is where I'm coming down on it right here. It focuses on the harem aspects, which is tied into bad humor, tasteless sexual content, all in there. Terrible jokes that don't serve anything. Look, your show can be horny if it wants to be horny, but it should be like there should be a reason for it, or make it not the central theme of it. A show that I think is fantastic is Demon Lord Retry. What makes it a bummer of a show is its weird, gross, and unnecessary sexual content. It doesn't need to be there. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't do anything in it. It's just needless and unnecessary. Well, otherwise, it's kind of an interesting show. Not a great show, but kind of an interesting show. But those are the things that I'm just like, okay, we're done here. I can't in good conscience tell you to watch How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, which does a lot of things well, and I think it's interesting. It's different from Demon Lord Retry, but, similar name. But that shows sexual content, especially in the second season, which is currently airing as I speak, Omega, is really it's a bummer. It's just a bummer, and it's not great, and I don't want you to watch it because I don't really want to. And then boring world character story, like a generic thing, like there's a dime a dozen. Who needs another one? You got to have something going there. You got to explore, have lore, have a plot that makes some sense. Or if it doesn't have a plot, if it's a slow going, if it's a postmodern and it's a slice of life, have a fun story and interesting characters, a good explanation of why this happened. If you're just like gonna write a show about a girl that gets reincarnated and ends up having girls she adopts as her daughters and some other characters that move in that are love interests, like I've been killing slimes for 300 years and finally maxed my level. Yeah, that's a fun, cute show where like the plot is let's add more characters for this main girl to fill her life with. And this is going to be fun, and we'll have some challenges and some weirdness, but we'll have a good time as we do it. And yeah, if that's your show, do that and really dive into it. Okay, so what's our next thing here? So what's the best? All right, so you may have seen a few cuts in this video. I've been cutting here and there. I'm experimenting with that. I'm actually going to cut here and going to cut to a different screen because we need to go onto the internet. Ooh, so let's check out the internet. So I looked up, what are people's rankings of the best isekai out there? Looking at some websites, looking at CBR, Comic Book Resources, They cover a lot of stuff. They cover wrestling. They cover anime. They say it's ReZero, and especially the original ReZero. I wouldn't have agreed in the beginning because it does take a while for me to be really interested in the main character. Subaru sucks for a long time, and he sucks for a reason. He's not like the Konosuba show, where your main character is just awful and is going to continue to be an awful person and bad at what they're doing. Whereas like, no, Subaru is going on a journey, and it takes a while. I finished season 2 of the show, and I very much enjoy it. So it does take a while to get great, but I can totally understand where they're coming from. I will have links to all of these lists in the show description below, so you can go check these out if you'd like. Moving on to Rancor, which is fan driven here. You can see there's some upvotes in here. This was the 25 best Isekai. It was a list, and people voted, and they've got That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime at the top of this list. And can't say I super disagree with that. Now, I believe this list was put out at the time of just season 1. Maybe this person also, and people are familiar with the light novels and the manga, and so they have more to say about that. I will say, of course, they're getting a little pop-up thing there. I apologize for that. I didn't screen cap these. We're literally looking at a websites, I should say. But some people are like now taking a look at this, and they're not really taking into account season 2 of That Time I Got Reincarnated Slime. So the first season, I would classify that as postmodern. This is, instead of like a powerful hero or a young, wizard, a strong, muscular person, whatever. You're a slime. Be a slime. Do your slime thing. And I will say season 2 moves farther into the traditional isekai. It is focusing on the action. It is less focusing on the silliness of it. It's moving around quite a bit. So that would say that season 1 is definitely pretty great. Oh, cool. This is fun. This is what I get for going to a website, not just taking a screen cap. I hope I'm not addicted to anime. I could be. Anyway, we're moving on because we also have My Anime Shop Online's top 20 isekai animes also considers That Time I Got Reincarnated as Slime as their top one, with Sword Art Online coming in number 2. I think, personally, if Sword Art Online had been less seasons, it would be ranked higher with people, but it just kept going and going and going and got weirder and weirder, and I would say less good as it went. But yeah, That Time I Got Reincarnated Slime totally fits at the top of this list. Makes a lot of sense. And as I said, as the show continues, it is shifting to more of a a more modern isekai, and for good or bad. All right, let's move on to another list here. We're looking at Game Rant. This is Game Rant's best isekai to watch ranked, and they say Log Horizon. Log Horizon is someone who has been or groups of people. This is multiple characters. We're playing a video game and now are living in that video game. That video game has become real. They now live in it. It's that kind of isekai. I have not finished the series. Season 3 came out pretty recently. I really enjoyed season 1, and I kind of never finished season 2. I would like to do that at some point, but it says right here in the article, it says in the article that this show is smart and well paced, and I agree. I very much agree that it's got an interesting twist to it. Its take on what does it mean to be inside a video game that has become real, I think, is really interesting. Its look at what it means to be an NPC in a world where your lifespan is short and there is no do-over for you, but suddenly your world has all these characters who are reborn, these larger-than-life people that you did not have before, and what does that mean? I think it's interesting. I don't know. I'm super into the concept of that show. And also, the top 21 isekai for Nerd Baer, who I don't know, but hey, they showed up on the page 1 of a Google image search or Google search for top isekai lists. They also say Log Horizon, and like I said, I can't, I can't argue. Also, this mentions by far the most balanced Isekai, and I would agree with that. This show has a good balance of humor, of having some slice of life style episodes, lots of action, people playing to their strengths in this world, people suffering in this world, this new world, I should say. Yeah, it's a really thoughtful show. So those are 5 websites. Then again, they're all in the show description below that are looking at their top tier lists. And now I'm going to get myself out of the internet and we'll go back to my PDF that I'm looking at. Ooh, PDFs. Looked at what some websites think is the best. But what about me? Because this is Pat Baer's Anime Club. It's not a collective forces anime club. It's Pat Baer's Anime Club. What does Pat Baer think is the best isekai? And it's that time I got reincarnated as Slime Season 1. Specifically Season 1, as I said, Season 2, I liked, but I didn't love. I'm interested in seeing Season 3. I'm a little bummed that this show did go from being a postmodern into a modern isekai, that it took its premise, but at the end of the day, especially with our character, you can see the slime, and then also in the middle, Rimuru has a humanoid form. As the character has just become more and more powerful, it has just progressed into more of a typical isekai. Now, there's a bunch of ladies into him, but it's not like fully a harem. And of course, there are also, as you can see, there are many gentlemen as well. There's a wide range of characters. Interesting. I like that this show has OVAs, 3 of which are canon. They are stories from the manga and considered events that happened in the show. So if you haven't watched the OADs, 3, 4, and 5, check them out on Crunchyroll, because they take place towards the end of Season 1, and I think are worth you checking out. Or actually, no. So I guess they take place towards the end of Season 1, and most of Season 2 takes place before the end of Season 1, which is a little confusing, and I didn't realize that at first. Anyway, I'm rambling. That time I got reincarnated as a slime is fantastic, and I highly recommend it. It, to me, checks all the boxes. It has got an interesting world, especially the magic within it. A main character I like to root for. I want Rimuru to succeed in what he's doing and what he's trying to accomplish. Full of great characters with their own wants and needs, everything from revenge to having a stable life to building a future for their children and for their race. Living in harmony, fighting with others. It's got a great world. Does it have some sexual jokes that I don't love? Yes. There's a whole... They go to and meet some elves at a bar, and it's like a hostess club, but it's elves, and that's not a fun episode, and they revisit that in Season 2, and that's not fun. But for the most part, that's very minor compared to the rest of the show. It is a small footnote, so I will totally go with that. I think the humor is fun and silly and lighthearted and not meant to be mean. And it's certainly not boring. I think it's got a cool world and a cool story. And there are things where you're like, hey, there's a villain that it really feels like a character from the first season is a villain, and we didn't really get into that. I really do think like there was a malice on one character's face that seemed not on the up and up. What's going on? And like you're starting to peel back the layers as we get into Season 2, and it feels thoughtful in a way that I really appreciate. On a bonus note, there is the Slime Diaries, which is a side series that takes place within Season 1. The art style is more chibi, more cute, and it is a slice of life. It's based on Slime Diaries, which was a slice of life manga within the world of the show, and it's fun. It's cute. It's got some not great jokes and some very good jokes and some recurring gags. And if you watch this show and you really like the character Geld, well, Geld gets to do some good stuff in Slime Diaries, so I highly recommend that. And that is going to do it for Pat Baer's Anime Club. In the comments below, what's your favorite isekai? Is it A Devil is a Part-Timer? And you're like bummed that I didn't think that it's the best isekai? What's your best isekai? What's your favorite isekai? Have you watched That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, and what do you think of it? What do you think of my criteria for what makes a good isekai versus what makes a bad isekai? And if isekais aren't your thing, What's your thing? Let me know in the comments what you would like to see me cover in the future. Of course, when we hit the end, in some weeks' time, we will hit the end of this current season, and I will do a wrap up / preview of the summer season. But that is a bit away. And then also keep your eyes peeled in the future for a live Pat Bear's Anime Club coming to a online convention near you, which is everybody. Thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next Pat Bear's Anime Club. Goodbye.